It's a great day. My name is Shay Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur, and welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show, the number one business development and revenue focused late night show in the country where we're on a mission. And our mission really is to inspire, our mission is to empower, and our mission is to provide you, that's right, you, the hard working entrepreneur, with all of the resources that are necessary to execute that big vision you have for the people you were called to serve. And on this particular episode, we have the one and only Nolan Nichols, who's in the building, and he's going to be talking about win from within, like really how to achieve your dreams, which I don't even know if that's even possible, but we're going to ask him. What's going on, Nolan? How you doing, man?
It's so good to be on the show, Shay, and just really thrilled to be here for the opportunity. It's great to talk with you.
It's great to have you here, man. You're here in Washington, D.C. I know we recently met, but you're here in D.C., ladies and gentlemen. I don't get to talk to many folks that are in D.C., and he's here. Let me ask a question, Nolan. I don't want to be funny. Folks are reading your bio. They'll see how famous you are. They're looking below and seeing the title. And we got this title, How to Win Within. But here's the question I have. Why do folks struggle today with really achieving their dreams? I know it's a loaded question. It's a big question. But they have these dreams, they have these desires, yet you would think it'd be easy for them, right? They just open up Instagram and get some excitement and motivation to go do it, or read a book online and take off. But yet, Nolan, they have a problem. They're not reaching their potential and achieving their dreams. Why? What's your view of the world, man?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of resistance out there in a lot of different ways, right? So you have, everybody's situation is different. It could be they have problems maybe at work, problems at home. There's a lot of wins, a lot of headwinds in their life, a lot of resistance that can really maybe intimidate us and provide really forms of setback. And we don't know where to start. And I think what's important to have the perspective of is if you live near an airport or if you drive near an airport, you might notice sometimes the planes take off a different way. And that's not because air traffic control is like, hey, I wonder which way we want to take off the planes today. No, the planes always take off against the wind. And they do that because the wind helps get the plane off the ground faster, which maybe that makes sense to you because, if you're flying a kite, you need some resistance to kind of get the kite off the ground. But what's fascinating is that planes get off the ground using less fuel if they go off against the wind. You would think if you take off against the wind, it's going to take more energy, it's going to take more fuel. It actually takes less because the headwinds actually provide lift. So the question is in our own lives is when there are some headwinds our way, when we don't maybe know what to do, when we have some setbacks at home, when we have setbacks in our job, maybe family things going on, how can we make the wins actually lift us higher instead of bringing us down? How can we live more kind of like an airplane where we have the power of purpose, we have that engine throttle, we can really power up, like the power of purpose. What are you here to do? What is that motivation within you? What are those things that you can really power up so that when the winds are really blowing in your face and really providing some resistance, it's actually lifting you higher, it's not bringing you down.
I love it. So what do you say to the person? Let's just talk to two type of individuals if we can. Let's first talk to the person that works a full-time job. And some of these folks on here watching know they work a full-time job and they're a full-time entrepreneur, by the way. They're both at the same time. But what do you say to the person that's like, look, I'm a leader of a team, Nolan, and my role is to make sure that everyone feels together. We have different ages in here. We have different backgrounds and different diversity and different individuals are here. What's one or two ideas that you would give me as the leader of the team that I can help so that folks can all be channeling their energy in the right direction towards a common goal for the organization? I guess the question specifically is, as a team leader, any ideas you can give me to help them achieve their dreams?
Yeah, I would say that's such a great question. I would say there's two things you can do as a leader. One would be, how do you connect everybody's role to the higher mission of the organization? So people on your team, they might have varying job titles, they might be doing varying tasks. What can you do to really connect each other to that higher mission? I'll give you one example to kind of follow up on that. In the early 1960s, President Kennedy was walking the halls of NASA in Houston, and he was going around the room, not just the room, he was going through the whole facility, asking people, hey, my name is President Kennedy. What do you do here? What's your role? So you can imagine when he was going around, he was getting a lot of different answers. He would go in the control room, ask somebody, "Hey, my name's President Kennedy. What do you do here?" They would say, "Oh, I'm making sure we're doing all the calculations so we have enough fuel to go to the moon and back." He might go to somebody else. "Hey, what do you do here?" They'll say, "Oh, I'm designing the spacesuit so our astronauts can get up to space safely." He was doing that the whole day. And towards the end of the day, he comes across a janitor in the hallway, and he goes up and says, "Hey, my name's President Kennedy. What do you do here?" I want you to think about how you would answer that question. The janitor said, "I'm here to put a man on the moon." I love that answer because the janitor, was his day-to-day role putting a man on the moon by sweeping the floors? Probably not. Like, there's no direct correlation between mopping the floors and putting a man on the moon. But by doing his day-to-day job, by sweeping the floors, by creating a clean environment for everybody to focus and feel welcomed, that was creating an environment to put somebody on the moon. And I think really as a leader, how do you really connect everybody to that vision? Like, no matter how big or small your role might seem to be, we're all going towards that shared mission. So I think as a leader, part one is making sure that everybody is connected to that mission, no matter what they do. Part two is that some folks' motivation lies outside their job. So I'll give you an example. Go to Starbucks. There's two baristas there working. One barista wants to own a Starbucks franchise when he gets older. He wants to move to Seattle to be a C-suite executive. He wants to go far at Starbucks, and he's a high performer in that Starbucks office. Well, barista number two loves working at Starbucks, but his motivation is that Starbucks allows him to work a early shift, to get off at 2 o'clock to go pick his kid up from school so he can be the best dad possible, so that he can be around his kid the most. So both of them, barista one and barista two, very high performers within Starbucks, but they both have different motivations. Barista one, will call him Scott. Scott, he he wants his goal, his dream is professional. It's directly linked to his job. Number two, Brian, his motivation doesn't really come from what he's doing. It comes from what he's doing outside of work. That fuels his motivation. Some people, a dream job, when you think of the term dream job, for some people that's a job that is their dream. And for other people, a dream job is just a job that enables them to live their dream outside of work. Both of them, Brian and Scott, both of them are having a dream job, but they have a variety, they have a diversity of motivation. So, again, to review, point number one is to make sure every day to day operation within your team, making sure they feel connected to the mission. But number two, which is very important, is to figure out what makes people motivate, what makes people tick. Why are the leaders on your team? And if they have other motivations, like for Scott, he wants to be able to be the best dad possible. Like, as a leader, what can you do to actually help him achieve his goals? Like, okay, hey, what can we do to help you be an even better dad by working here? Because I guarantee you, if people are succeeding at things outside of work, that is going to spill over onto their day job. And we see that because the opposite is true, right? Like, if things are rough outside of work, you might carry that attitude into your job. And the opposite is true. It's about what makes everybody motivated, what gives them a sense of purpose. And as a leader, how do I lean into that to where I'm not just supporting you in your job, but I'm supporting you outside your job? And in today's employee market, where, hey, we still have a worker shortage. Like, the battle for talent is very, very tough. If you can provide for your employees and make them feel like they're becoming a better person by working under you, I guarantee you that you will keep that employee longer than the national average.
You know, I love how you said that. And I think that's spot on. Folks are listening. They're like, okay, Shay, I hear this, Nolan. It's making sense. I love the Starbucks example, by the way. Great story, man. Spot on. I mean, I like the Nixon one. But here's the question. They're like, say, who in the LL Cool J is this person that's talking like this? Like, can you slow down for a moment? Can he tell us his backstory? Can you tell her who is he? So it's a two-part question. Number one, what's your backstory? So the audience knows. Everybody don't know how famous you are, man. They're not reading the bio right now. Someone's at the gym listening to the podcast. Someone else is driving down the road. Someone we're just in the speakers in their car. So they want to know, number one, what's his backstory? Number two, what was that defining moment in his story that he knew that he was destined to help folks win and achieve their dreams? And so, two-part question: the backstory, bro, and at the end of the day, how did you know you're gonna be doing this? What's that defining moment?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. I'll kind of give you the Cliff Notes version. But growing up, I loved, dreaming and thinking big. And I grew up a Virginia Tech sports fan. If you're watching on video, you see the Virginia Tech jersey right behind me. Grew up a Virginia Tech sports fan. I was watching Virginia Tech football every Saturday. And I got into high school, and our high school basketball coach, I was terrible at basketball, but I still wanted to be part of the team. And the high school basketball coach was like, "Hey, you should just come film every game, home and away. You can ride the bus, you can dress out with the team, not the jersey, but the day of, wear the uniform during the school day and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, this is great, because I don't have to make a basketball pass or make a shot. I can just be part of the team doing video." And just really grew a passion for video. And my junior year, the high school basketball coach is like, "Hey, I had a former player that had a roommate that they went to Virginia Tech, and they were part of the video team for the football team. And they pay for your school. It's a scholarship position. They only take 1 to 2 people a year. But yeah, you should think about that." So I grew up a Virginia Tech fan. So I'm like, this is my dream. I'm going to go to Virginia Tech. I'm going to try to get this very competitive job to help pay for school, because I didn't know how I would pay for school if I didn't get it. So I was kind of putting all the eggs in one basket, you could say. So I go my freshman year. They don't hire until their January, into the spring. So I go the first semester, and I'm just like, I'm telling everybody, "Man, I'm going to get this job. I can't wait." I had no reason to believe I would get it, but it just, in my mind, I was just so determined that it would work out. And January comes, and long story short, I emailed the person like, "Hey, when are you going to come to the class to talk about this job posting?" The guy emails back. It's on a Friday, by the way. I remember this so vividly. He says, "We're not sure we're going to hire." And I'm devastated, because this is my dream. This is my dream since age 13, to go to Virginia Tech, and then to be on this video team. And I remember saying, "God, if I don't hear back in a week, next Friday, I'm just going to get a new dream. I'm just going to find something else out." And a week later comes, and sure enough, he emails back saying, "We're going to hire, and I'll be in class next week." Fast forward a month or two, I was fortunate to get that job. And what entailed was just 8 incredible years at Virginia Tech, where I was a graduate student, undergraduate student. Again, didn't know how I was going to pay through college, but that position, again, I was putting everything in one basket. Was able to allow me to afford to go to college. I stayed on for graduate school as a graduate assistant within that same department. I was offered a full-time job, and I was working there for 2 years, over 2 years, managing the student program and working with ESPN on campus. So Che, I was living my dream. So you might be wondering, okay, how are what is it that you're doing now? How does that relate to back then? I left Virginia Tech, and you might be thinking that wait, that was your dream. Why would you leave? Why would you leave your dream? So you might remember, some folks listening on the podcast might remember, maybe 6 years ago, there was this thing called Movie Pass, and basically it was $8 a month, and you could go to one movie a day. And it sounds like a terrible business model, because it went bankrupt, because they were thinking people wouldn't use it, and they did. So I was going to some movies that I normally would never go to, but I'm like, "Oh, it's only $8. You go to one movie, or you got your money back." And at the time, there was one movie called The Greatest Showman, and I go with some friends to watch that movie. And I remember I'm sitting in the theater, and early on in the movie, the second song in the movie, it's the song "A Million Dreams." And I remember thinking of that song and that movie. I'm like, I want my life to be like that. That is just inspiring people uh, to live their dream. So when I was at Virginia Tech, I was managing up to 70 some students. I was doing workshops with them about career development and resumes, and what they want to do. And man, I love that so much. And but I left Virginia Tech because, to go back to that Starbucks example, growing up, my dream was a job. It was to work at Virginia Tech. When I got to Virginia Tech and thought about what's the next chapter for me, I realized my dream was what I did outside of 5 o'clock. And it totally shifted for me. So I left. I moved to Washington, D.C. to be a video producer for U.S. Travel Association, which is a trade group for the travel industry. I'm still in that role. That's my full time role. But I do keynote speaking as a side hustle. You mentioned that a little bit earlier, Shay, and so I'm trying to get that off the ground, and hopefully in the coming years that'll be my full time thing. So I totally understand the grind of people trying to be an entrepreneur and all the things that go into that, especially when you're trying to balance another full time job. But that's my dream. So now it's just helping people get through personal and professional well-being, and figuring out, okay, what is your dream? Doesn't have to be related to work, or maybe it is related to work, but getting real with people. What is your dream, and how can you apply that into your day-to-day life?
I love it, man. Thanks for being so authentic. Thanks for sharing the backstory. I love that. We have a segment here, Nolan, that's called Today is My January 1st. And for those folks that are listening, those folks that are tuning in, you know what about to do every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You get to go ahead and say those words. Today is my January 1st. Happy New Year to you. Doesn't that just feel so good? And for all our new folks that are tuning in and watching for the very first time, welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur family. We're glad to have you here. I want you to hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button so you can stay in contact with us. And more importantly, pay this message forward. Today is my January 1st. It represents a personal mantra for us. It represents a fresh start. It represents a do-over. It means the past. No matter how dark, no matter how gloomy the past is, that past no longer equals the future. So my question for Nolan is really twofold. Number one, when you hear those words, today is my January 1st, one, what do you hear? And number two, what was a time in your life where there was a setback? Things didn't go the way they wanted it to. And then how were you able to bounce back from that?
Yeah, I think when I hear January 1st, I hear a fresh start, a new beginning, really kind of putting the past in the past, and focusing on today and what can be tomorrow. And I think, we're getting closer to January 1st in the calendar. And I think that's just such a special time to think anew, think fresh, get new vision. You're not the same person that you are today as you were yesterday. You're constantly getting better, constantly improving. And I just love, I love the thought of a January 1st. I think in terms of the setbacks and challenges that I've experienced, I think, man, it's just so much when you're trying to do something new. And I think, I grew up a very shy kid. People find out that I'm keynote speaking now, and they can't believe it, because they're like, there's no way you're the same kid that you were going through school, because I was very shy, very reserved. And now, keynote speaking, I have a passion for it. I love public speaking. I love doing team building events with various organizations, and helping employees really get better with their personal and professional well-being. But man, there's so many challenges with that. When you're trying to launch something, oh my gosh, like it's an absolute grind. And I was talking to a friend about that a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, do you know what the definition of grind is? And I was like, no, I use that term a lot, but didn't really know what it is. And when you Google that word grind, it's making big things small. And it's like, maybe your dream's a rock, and where you want to go is like a rock. And it's like, okay, how do I grind it down to make something like a beach, like sand? Like, you're making something really big, very small and tangible. And man, I tell you what, it's some days are very, very tough, when it's like, oh man, are you going to get there? How long is this going to take? And what really is the perspective shift for me is, faith is a big part of my life. And I understand, viewers that are listening to this, you might have different stances in what you believe. But you know what? I think it's coming from the standpoint of, you're already the most loved as you could ever be. Whether that love's coming from a higher power, from God, whether it's coming from friends, whether it's coming from family. You know what? You don't need to achieve something to feel like a person. Like, you don't have to be authenticated by what you do. Like, you don't have, what you do doesn't qualify as you. Like, you're called to do something. Everybody listening to this podcast is called to do something. And because you're called, you're qualified. Like it's about acting out what is that calling on your life, and not really getting into the trap of comparing yourself. Sometimes I fall into the comparison trap, and I'll just end with this one example. Shay, I know I get long-winded on some of these answers, but the comparison trap is tough because you were mentioning earlier about social media. And man, social media is a great tool to connect with people, but man, you get to see what everybody else is doing. You open up LinkedIn, you see what everybody else is doing, and you might be like, man, I am so far behind where I need to be. But the fact is, you're not. And the last analogy story I'll kind of share here is when I was working at Virginia Tech. You learn a lot. We worked amongst all sports. Obviously, football was the biggest, but somebody was telling me once a strategy in track, and man, it I've never forgotten it, and I want to share with your viewers. There's this one strategy in track where there's like the 20,000 meter race, which is like 25 laps around the track or something like that. It's really long. And what another team will do, let's pretend I'm supposed to be the winner. Like everybody knows that I'm supposed to win the race, and everybody knows I'm the favorite to win. What another team will do is they'll put in a Connor, and a Connor is like used to running like the 50-meter race, so like he or 200-meter race, like he's only used to running 4 laps, and he's done. Another team will put a sprinter in. Race starts, and first lap, Connor's beating me. I'm like, oh, who's this Connor get? Second lap, Connor's got a bigger lead. Third lap, Connor's got an even bigger lead. And I'm like, who's this Connor guy? I'm supposed to be the winner. I'm getting embarrassed. Like, I need to pick up my pace or I'm going to lose. So I pick up my pace to keep up with Connor. Lap number 7, Connor drops out of the race. He literally goes to the bleachers to watch the rest of the race. Meanwhile, I get to lap 22, start losing steam. 23 comes, lap 24. Lap 25, I finish in 4th place because I spent the first 7 laps trying to keep up with Connor that I wasn't running my race. So to relate it back to being an entrepreneur, it's about like, you know what? You know the race you need to run, and certainly other people can encourage you and help push you forward. But when you're trying to get worth and value off somebody else, you're going to be using a lot of energy to keep up with a Connor that you could have been using for your race. Because if you just focus on the race you need to run, you're running for lap 25. You're playing the long game. You're not running to win lap number 7. You're running to win lap 25. So it's about really that January 1st moment. It's about fresh start. You know what? I'm not going to look for other people to get my worth. My worth is going to come from within, and really focusing on that.
I love it, man. Perfectly said. Thanks for sharing that. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever been given? You've had a lot of mentors along this journey of life. We all have. Some maybe you've met, some maybe you just met online. But you think about just one piece of advice from any of the mentors you had along this journey, or something that you read. What's one piece of advice that you would pass on, that you hold near and dear in your heart, you would pass on to the listeners that are watching and the viewers that are watching right now so they could be more successful? And you at home, or you that's listening, and maybe you're listening to the podcast, this is a chance for you to lean in, right? Because you may never meet his mentor. You may never read the book he's read. You may never seen the video he's read, but yet he can share something with you that you can use for the rest of your life. So here's the question. What's one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given or picked up, man, that you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advice I've had over the years from reading books. There's always things podcasts, things that stick out. I would say one of the mentors, I would my dad. I think that's somebody that I've always really looked up to. And one thing that he shared that was a quote from another person. I can't remember who first said it, but my dad told me, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And it's about, okay, like there's always going to be tough times in life, and it's about like, okay, like keep moving forward, like keep doubling down when something is worthwhile doing. Hey, tough times don't last, tough people do. And I think that's something that's always really stuck with me. And, we all go through different seasons, right? Like we go through spring seasons where things are blossoming, and summer seasons when things are cooking and rolling. We go through winter seasons too. And sometimes if you're in a winter season, you have to, like, spring never skips its turn. Like you just keep moving forward. Your goal is not to grow fruit in winter. Like you don't have to put those unnecessary expectations on your life. Like sometimes you Some seasons you thrive, and some seasons you just try to survive. And that's what winter's about. We're about to enter winter now. And it's about, you know what? No matter what season of your life you're in, whether things are going good, things are going bad, tough times don't last, but tough people will do.
Well, I love it, man. Thanks a lot for sharing. I certainly appreciate that. As we come down the home stretch, two-part question. Number one, what type of clients are you looking to work with these days, if any? And number two, how can folks best connect with you? How can they stay in this conversation with you over and beyond today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you giving me time just to talk really briefly about it. So the organization is called A Million Dreams, and basically I'm a keynote speaker at various, whether it's a conference or I do a lot of team building events as well. So big and small organizations, it doesn't matter how big or small the organization is. Workforce motivation levels. They just did a study, a big organization a couple months ago, and saw that it's actually declining. Like people are feeling less motivated at work. So, I really go through a full workshop on what does it look like to elevate your personal and professional well-being. And certainly I talk with the businesses to get, what do they want out of it. So every talk is customized. But I love talking to people in the workforce and businesses and organizations to figure out, okay, how do we bring the organization closer to each other, help them feel more connected to the mission, and at the same time help people feel like their personal well-being is elevating as well. So you can follow me more on Instagram. I'm really active on Instagram. It's at Nolan_Nichols. But also the best spot, honestly, is the website. It's amilliondreams.info, has videos and all the information about it. But those two things, the website and Instagram, are probably the best way to get in contact.
I love it, man. Thanks so much for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shay. Enjoyed it.
And thank you. Thank you to viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here, because without you, well, there would be no show, by the way. So I want to let you know as you watch, I love to share every night that you really are amazing. You truly are incredible. You're a special, very special individual. And not only do you have the potential inside of you to perform at a higher level, but you have the greatness that you need, as he just said, Nolan, to really achieve your dreams. Isn't that so encouraging? Isn't that so exciting? And because I know that today is your January 1st, I believe your best is still yet to come. I believe your best is yet to come. Your best is still yet to come. With that being said, my name, well, it's still Shay Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur. Make it a great day, everyone. And I promise you, from the bottom of my heart, we'll make some good things how we connect again next time. Thanks a lot, Nolan. We appreciate you, man. Peace, everybody. We out of here. See ya.